Hey guys, it's GameFacer and welcome back to another FIFA 19 beta video. Today, this is the one that you've all been waiting for. Here is the inside information as to what is new on career mode. Quick warning, this video is probably not going to be that long because there's not a long list, but I'll get into the reasons for that, and I'll also talk a lot about what is actually new in career mode. And there are a few slight additions, but in terms of massive features, there's not a lot for me to talk about, but I will get into all that. If you haven't seen the previous FIFA 19 beta videos, I'd really recommend you go ahead and watch them. I've done the club budget, so I've done the first part to that. There's probably going to be a second part at some point. I've also been through and told you a little bit more about some of the new features outside of career mode, across kickoff and that sort of thing. So you can click those in the top right hand corner. I'd also appreciate you clicking that like button as well. Even though you might not necessarily like what I'm going to say here, please don't shoot the messenger. I'm only telling you what is on the beta. I'd also appreciate you subscribing as well. There'll be more FIFA 19 information coming out shortly. I also do career mode videos as well, for those of you who don't know. I'm trying to hit 20,000 subscribers, so I'd appreciate all the support that you guys can give by hitting that subscribe button. Let's crack on with things, and let's first of all say that this is just the beta, so things can be introduced in the full game. I've heard rumours that they've not necessarily brought everything out for the beta. Maybe there will be new features that we've not seen on the beta. However, I should add, I think that's unlikely. I think this might well be what we're going to get. As much as I don't want to put a downer on this, I think this might be what's going to be in the full release. It would seem strange for EA not to actually put the new features into the beta, because this is the point where people are actually going to be testing the beta. They want the feedback. They want to know if there's any bugs with the new features. So it seems bizarre to suggest that maybe there will be new features, but they're just not in the beta. So I do think this is genuinely what we're going to get, although I could be wrong on that. So we'll have to wait and see when the full release is out. So as far as I'm aware, this is probably what is going to be in the full game. I will, as ever, be reading my notes, so I'll be looking down at some points and making sure I cover everything. This FIFA, there's no big features for me to talk about, to be totally honest. I will go through the tweaks and changes that have been made. So first of all, there are new menus after selecting a team. You go into like a new sort of menu. Before, there was sort of the selection of what difficulty you want, and the menu sort of went down across like that. Whereas this is sort of like a selection of, like, I think 8 different options, and you can choose your difficulty. There's a new difficulty added to career mode this year. Legendary is no longer the toughest one. There's actually another one past that point. That is called Ultimate Difficulty. Obviously, you guys that play Ultimate Team will have heard of Ultimate Difficulty before. It has been on Ultimate Team now for the last year or two, but they have put it into career mode, so there's actually one above Legendary for you to now select, called Ultimate, and you can play it on Ultimate Difficulty. That should hopefully help people like myself who had to keep changing the sliders last FIFA. Maybe that's going to be a good addition and will help us in a more practical sense in-game, rather than obviously having to spend time messing around with the sliders and things when we can't have the game difficult enough for us. So that's interesting. You can also enable or disable European competitions, as we've seen before. I mean, EA can't get enough of telling us that they've got the license, the Champions League and the Europa League, so you can, of course, switch those on and off if you choose to, and same with transfer windows, as we've seen in previous FIFAs. Like I said before, the Champions League branding is used quite a lot, particularly in the news section. It's heavily used, especially if you're playing with a team in the Champions League to begin with. You'll see as soon as you start the career mode, the Champions League draw has been made, and you'll see that in the news section. You'll see the ball being drawn, you'll see the group that you're in put into the news section. So they're very heavy on the Champions League branding and things in this FIFA, so watch out for that. And like I say, it's the same with the Europa League as well. That's shown quite often. You're also shown big signing unveilings in the news section. So they have added 1 or 2 things into the news, which no one really cares about, to be honest, but I'll go through it anyway. Unveilings are now shown on, when you sign a new player, it's now shown a little bit better. So, for example, when I started a Man City career mode, Vidal had been signed by somebody. He comes out onto like a stage, like we see sometimes when they're presented to the fans. That sort of thing is shown. He came out onto a stage, there was like fireworks, etc., and then he started doing kick-ups on the stage. That sort of unveiling has been implemented into the news section, which is a nice little thing, but again, nothing that we really wanted. And I also thought that I'd go through and check some of the things that you guys were asking about in the comments as well. So someone was asking about manager customization. I've heard rumours of manager customization being in the full game. It's certainly not in the beta though. It's not in the beta at all, and so it is exactly the same as when choosing your manager. It might be something that they bring into the full game, but again, I think it's very strange to leave features out of the beta. The beta's about testing it, it's about finding out what bugs there are, and it's also about the occasional leak as well, and actually hearing about what new features are going to be in the game, because it's part of the marketing technique. You have people that play the game that you get onto the beta, and they help market it and build it up. I'm not able to build it up that much to you guys because there's not that many new features. So it would seem strange for them to leave those features out and put them into the full game and not the beta. But again, it might be the case that they have decided to do that. But certainly there's no manager customization in the beta. Although I have, like I say, heard rumours about it. Whether that is true or not, I'm not really too sure. Something that you will be interested in. Something that might actually get you slightly excited. It's only small, but okay. New training drills. So not only have they changed the names, which I think happens year on year, they've also now added a strength drill and a sprint speed drill. I think there's actually 3 drills that train sprint speed as well as other attributes. There's 1 drill that trains your strength as well, and that they can now be used. I will also add that if you do train sprint speed, you can't also train the strength at the same time. They've been very, very careful about the implementation of that within the training drills. You can't train both at the same time. It's one or the other, and they are really sort of making sure that you can't, I suppose, overuse that and abuse that in order to have Vincent Company on 99 sprint speed. You can't train acceleration. It's just sprint speed that you can train, and from what I've seen so far, it does train fairly well. I'm not really too sure exactly whether sprint speed's actually gone up as an attribute yet when I've trained players, but it's certainly you can see it increasing in the progress bar fairly regularly. You'll also see in the training drills that there are different combinations of attributes that now can be trained, so it's quite interesting actually the combination. There's a lot of short passing drills implemented into some of these drills, and they're a little bit of a different combination. Actually, I think a better combination of attributes that you get from each of the drills that you can do. So I think that's quite interesting. Again, just a small minor tweak, but something I think people will be happy to see. But like I say, you can't train both the sprint speed and the strength at the same time. It's one or the other. The effect of those drills I've not yet seen. It does seem very similar though to previous FIFAs. I don't think there's anything particular that's changed in terms of how quickly they grow in overall or by the attributes. Also, some people asking about negotiations. Has that changed? As far as what you can do in negotiations, it's exactly the same. I think there's maybe slight dialogue changes in terms of the subtitles, but the animations of actual negotiations are exactly the same. The process of negotiations is exactly the same, and as is the release clauses, selling clauses, etc. They haven't really changed. Although there is something to mention about release clauses. I might get that to that in a second. But something I do want to go through is team management. Okay, so this has been implemented. I think most people know about this, and this is the implementation of the tactics tab has been changed. There's also been the addition of game plans as well, which I'll go on to, and I'll probably speak about that a little bit more in the gameplay video that I do at some point. But there is now a tactics tab, which I think was there last time anyway, but that has changed. This is the important bit. You can now have more control over your defensive and offensive styles. This has been mentioned by EA, so you might well be aware of this, but we'll go into it anyway and we'll speak a little bit more about it. In terms of defensive styles, you can have a constant pressure, you can have drop back, you can have balanced, you can have pressure on the heavy touch, you can have press after the possession is lost, and you can change the width and the depth at which your team basically stays at. So it's quite good actually. It's quite a nice implementation if you are into the tactics side of the game. If you're not really fussed by that, then it's probably not affect you. But if you're like me and you like to get the tactics right for the opponent that you're facing, then this actually could be quite useful for you, to be fair. So you can go through different game plans. You have 4 different game plans you can go through. Park the bus is no longer a thing. All out attack is no longer a thing in game. You now have game plans that you can switch to. So you have your default game plan, you have your defensive, ultra defensive, attacking, and ultra attacking. There's no park the bus anymore, although I suppose you could create your own sort of park the bus one if you really wanted to on the ultra defensive game plan. But basically the way that this works is you switch around the formations if you want to. You can switch around the offensive style and defensive style, and you also have the option to change your width and your depth that you're playing at as well if you choose to in each of those individual game plans. So it's quite a nice feature. Again, not something we necessarily asked for, but it does add another layer to the tactics side of things, and it does get implemented in game actually quite well. I've certainly seen Man City, the press is very, very high. There's a massive press on that defence to win back the ball. And so it is quite realistic. Maybe it's been overdone a little bit. Well, I'm not really too sure yet. I haven't played enough to be able to give you a better understanding of that. But certainly the high press is very, very clear from Man City in the gameplay. And that is something that has been implemented by EA. If we look at offensive styles, you have possession, you can have balance, you can have long ball, and you can have fast build-up play as well. I think that's quite important to note that these styles are slightly different for defensive and offensive. Obviously, if you want to have a slightly different style of play, then you can now implement that into your tactics before the game has started. You also, this is also quite interesting, you have control over the number of players in the box for corners and free kicks. You can control this in the team management section before you've played a game. This is quite an interesting one. You are choosing between having a low amount of players in the box, a normal amount of players in the box, and a high amount of players in the box. So I don't think that specifically talks about how many are going to be in the box there, but on screen it shows 5 players in the box as the maximum. But I think it might be a situation, actually, it might be a little bit higher in-game, because 5 in the box isn't really that impressive. I think that's quite a standard thing to do. So maybe it doesn't necessarily control whether it's 1 to 5 players in the box, maybe it just controls a rough amount of how many you'll see there, whether it's a low, medium, or high amount of players. So it's not very specific as that, it's quite difficult to tell from the menus, but I think it's something that they have implemented there which is quite useful for us. You can also do the exact same, like I said before, for free kicks and also players in the box as well. You can determine whether you want lots of runs into the box, medium or low numbers of run into the box. So that's something that's quite a nice addition, but again, nothing that you're going to sort of jump up and down about. Also, there has been some instructional changes as well. You can now change the run type from the fullbacks. You can now have overlap and inverted. Before it was just overlap. You can also now have an inverted run as well, which Cal Walker did quite a lot, I think, in real life last season. You can also have the centre mids covering the wings and also covering the centre now, so that is an option for you to do in the instructions. Release clauses. This is actually quite interesting. This is the part where I was a little bit excited by this. When you are searching for players, you now can see whether they have a release clause. So if I'm searching for, say, players from Juventus, I go onto that, and as I'm scrolling through the players that play for Juventus, as well as their price and their wage, it says release clause none or release clause 70 million, etc. So you can now see the release clause before you've added them into your shortlist. A nice little tweak, but I should also add, you can search by release clause players. That is very, very interesting. Not only can you search by transfer listed, by loan, you can also search by release clause. This is something that's quite exciting. This is something I'm very happy to see, but again, not a massive new feature that has been spoken about a lot or anything. But now players are more visible as to when they have release clauses and when they don't. And I'm going to go through some of the release clauses and see exactly what you guys think of these in the comment section below. I've noted a few of them down just so you have an idea of how many players have release clauses and how big those clauses are. So in Dide, £31.5 million, Jack Cork, £16.1 million, Eric Bailly, £60 million, Courtois, £98.2 million release clause. I think Chelsea wish that they got that for him. Busquets, £70 million release clause. Kepa, £41.3 million release clause. Again, similar situation with that. I bet Chelsea wish they paid that for him. We've got Harry Kane. He has a release clause of 129 million. De Bruyne 173.2. Tom Kearney 21.8 million. Foden 4.7 million pound release clause. Not too sure by that. And we've also got Dembele, £78.7 million, Toni Kroos, £138.4 million, and the final one which I wanted to mention, in fact the penultimate one, is Lionel Messi has a release clause. I can't remember whether he did in the last FIFA or not, but he certainly does on this one, or at least in the beta he does, £198.8 million release clause. Checked Ronaldo doesn't. He is obviously playing for Juventus though on the beta as well. He doesn't have a release clause, but Messi does. And a nice little interesting one which I wanted to mention was a player that Real Madrid signed called Junior. I think it's Vinicius Junior. I might pronounce that one wrong, but obviously he is quite a well-known wonder kid now since he joined Real Madrid for a large amount of money. He is also on the game. He has a face. You can actually see him. He's actually got a picture, and that is quite good. He's 17 years old. He's down as a left mid. I thought he was a centre mid, but I don't know a lot about him, to be honest. I thought he was a centre mid, but he's down as a left mid on the game. 17 years old, 76 overall is what he is on the beta. And he has a release clause as well, and that release clause is £36 million. I've signed him for Man City on this, and he looks pretty good, to be fair. Very, very fast player, and like I say, a left mid as well, but I thought he was a centre mid, to be honest. I also want to clarify the scouting system. Now, this is a little bit clearer this year as to what experience and what judgment actually means. This hasn't always been clear in previous FIFAs. Some people have worked it out, some people haven't. It's now very, very clear from the off when you pick your scouts who you want to actually go find your players. So EA have now told us in the actual menus of picking the scouts, experience means that when you have a higher experience, you get more players, i.e. they scout a larger quantity of players. When you have a higher judgment, you scout higher quality of players. So it's about quantity and quality, quantity being experience, judgment being the quality of those players. So that's what the star ratings mean. They've clarified it and made it a little bit clearer in the menu so people actually know what that is based on. So I thought that was quite interesting. I also should add, I think there might have been new countries added to the scouting system. Don't quote me on that one. I can't remember all of them off the top of my head, but it certainly looked like there had been a couple of new countries added. Not loads. Don't get excited. You can't scout Iceland. You can, however, scout Russia, which I don't know if that was there. Venezuela you can scout. There's no sort of new additions to the African teams or anything like that. But there's maybe one or two more. Don't quote me on that one again because I'm not really 100% sure what teams have been added, but certainly nothing to get that excited about. There's not been a massive range of new teams. Unfortunately, they haven't made it so you can scout any country, which is a bit of a shame. Australia and New Zealand are on there. I can't remember whether they were on there before. I think Australia certainly was. But yeah, just maybe there's new countries, maybe there's not. In terms of play career mode, which has been mentioned in the comments, there's no changes as far as I'm aware. I've played it. I can't see any new stuff at all, which is very disappointing really, especially with the customization of players. Nothing new on that front either. Maybe this is added in the full game, I have no idea, but as far as I can see, there's no sort of new features in that. So I've tried to go through all your questions as well that you left in the comments of the last two beta videos that I did. And I think I've answered just about everything, hopefully. I'm not seeing any implementation of the sort of journey-like dialogue that you can have with, obviously, Hunter. In that game mode, there's none of that's implemented, really, into this, where the manager speaks to the press or anything like that. That's not in the game, or at least on the beta, anyway. So, yeah, a little bit disappointing on the features front. Again, like I said before, it might be that there's features in the full release, and they just haven't put them in the beta for whatever reason, to stop leaks or whatever. But certainly, as far as I'm aware, the changes aren't that huge. But what I have gone through might make a bit of a difference to some people. The release clauses I'm quite happy with. The fact that you can now search for them at least. Obviously we had the release clauses last year. But the fact you can search for them is quite a good feature. But again, nothing that's sort of monumental or game changing really. But that is really it for this video. Sorry to be the bearer of bad news. It's not my fault. I'm just sort of telling you what I've seen and what I've played of the FIFA 19 beta on career mode. It's always quite nice to be able to sort of have added on features and just hope that EA spend time on the game, but it just doesn't seem like they have really as far as the beta is concerned. Maybe it means that they're going to put those things into the full game, but I'd just be very surprised by that. I think the whole point of the beta is that you test the new features and you get feedback and you improve on the bugs, and it'd be very strange for them to not get feedback and not have it bug tested in the beta. So I just don't see that as a possibility personally, but I might well be wrong. There's obviously that scenario as well. Thank you all so much for watching this video, guys. Like I said, there'll be a gameplay video. There has actually been some change to the gameplay that I can talk about. There might well be another budgets video as well, because I did miss out a number of, let's say, lesser leagues and less popular leagues, shall we say. But I might well do another video on that so you guys are aware of roughly what the budgets are. Thank you all so much for watching. If we could try to get 100 likes on today's video, then I'd really appreciate it. Also, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already as well. Trying to hit 20,000 subscribers, and I'd appreciate your support as we try and get to that point. Thank you so much for all your support on these videos so far. It is really appreciated. We're so close to 19,000 subscribers now. We're trying to push to 20 as quickly as possible, and I'd really appreciate your help in doing that. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.